Today we're going to discuss one of those interesting topics about should I spine align my clubs or flow my clubs or pure my clubs. Now they're all different things, and I'm going to take you through what they are. But we're going to have a good in-depth look, or as much of an in-depth look as we can, because there seems to be very limited information out there about what this actually does for your golf clubs. So we're going to move over to the workshop and see and start the explanation. So first we're going to have a look at a spine aligning. Now basically a steel shaft will start, as like a sheet of paper, right? It's a sheet of steel. And in order to make a shaft, it'll be rolled. Okay? And that's basically construction of a steel shaft, really high tech. Now along here there'll be a seam. Okay, and there's probably no denying that. That's definitely something that is in steel shafts. There is a seam down them. I suppose the contention is to whether or not that seam affects the golf ball, and whether or not where we put that seam when we insert the shaft, whether or not that will affect how we play. So I'm going to do a test today. I'll show you how we find a spine. Okay, it's really simple. I've got two identical shafts. C-taper light 110 stiffs. I'm going to build one to go in into a demo, into a fitting iron. I'm going to build one just standard, right? And then I'm going to do a spine and a flow on another one. Put that together today, and then tomorrow after it's dried, or maybe later on this afternoon, I'm going to hit some balls with both and see if it actually makes a difference. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the spine. Okay, so basically the machine that we use, really simple. It's a couple of ball bearings here. We put the shaft in, and then we grab a third ball bearing. Okay, so we've got two bearings here. A bearing, not a ball bearing. There's ball bearings in the bearing. And then we basically put load on the shaft, so we press down and turn it. Right, so we press down with the bearing. Press down to create some load, and then we turn the shaft, right? And it'll get to a point where you can feel it. You can feel the seam in the shaft. It's a really weird thing, but I can feel it's right there. And that's where the shaft is ovaling, or that's where the shaft has been joined, so to speak. Now I've made a little mark on this already. I've already done that. So there's a tiny little mark. So now I know where that spine is, okay? And when I install it, let me just grab a demo, a fitting head, sorry. So just grab a fitting head. And this is a fitting collar. If I was to install this, I would install it with this spine, so to speak, in that orientation, directly towards or perpendicular to the club face. So I'd get that perfect. I'd line that right up, perpendicular to the club face and towards the target. Okay. Now that's a spine alignment. Moving on from that, if you've got a graphite shaft and a high quality good graphite shaft could have 20 layers in it. So it's got 20 spines. So as you would turn this through the machine, you'd keep feeling little notches. And so which spine do you put it on? I don't know, like it's just a guess, right? So that's why we move into the next process, which they call a flow, or a flatline oscillation. So I've already done this one, but I'll show you basically how it's done. We get a nice little laser. It's about 210 grams, so it's designed to simulate like a golf club head weight. And again, we're going to put it in. This time we're just going to put it in the clamp. Clamp it on, and then you can see there's a little laser line there. So this one that's been done, and you see how that laser, you know, like it goes back and forward. I'm just doing this by hand, but it goes back and forward through that cross, okay? So that shaft is what we call flowed, and we do the same process where I'd mark along there, right, and this shaft's done. Okay, so now the thing that concerns me is that the shaft goes back and forward in a straight line. That's fabulous, okay? But when you hit a golf shot, the shaft only flexes once. So in theory, the important flick or flex is the first one. And you see that goes, I mean this one, depending on how straight it's becoming loose. But I'm going to move that out of its position, okay? I'm going to move it out of its position. Just get it in a spot where it's really quite bad. Look, that's really good actually. So it's going back and forward really nicely. There we go, it's beautiful. Oh, it's right on the mark, so let me move it to a spot. Let me move it into a spot, and quite often, a lot of these times, there's not only one spot that'll work. Alright, so I've got a spot now that's really quite bad. It's not even remotely close. And so when I flick it, you see how that's going up and down and round. Now this is only a 7 iron in steel, it's not a bad shaft, but I'm going to mark a little X here. This is where we stop, okay? And we're going to see, when this is out of flow, as to whether or not the first pass will go through the line. Forget about the second, third, fourth, just the first one. So here we go, I'm just going to get it here. Will it go through the X? I think it does, and I think it actually continues to go through that X. But the first one, so to me, this shaft that is out of flow, you know, I start it from over here somewhere, it goes through the X, and then it might go off and down and round and all this sort of stuff, right? Might do that. But the first pass goes through here. And this is why I don't do my own golf clubs. Because I think the shaft only flexes once in a golf swing, and it doesn't matter where I put this shaft, in what orientation, the first time I flick it back, it goes through that original center line. And then after that, it starts to do some funny stuff, okay? Anyways, what I think is not necessarily right, I'm gonna test it. So I'm gonna build this club now. I've got the flow mark on it. I'm gonna set my ferrule depth, which is appropriate for this brand of club. That's the right ferrule depth. I'm going to make sure the lengths are both the same on the two clubs, 36 and 7/8 7 iron, which they are. So now I've got not flowed and flowed. All right, I'm going to mix up a little bit of glue. And eventually, you know, I'm going to build these two clubs to as close a spec as I can get them. I mean, it's the same brand. It's a KBS C-Taper Light, 110 grams stiff. little bit on there. Turn that in just to center it. And then I'm going to get that right on. Like I said, I got it right aligned. You tap in. And this shaft now has been flowed, okay? Perfectly lined up. Now, you can see, you know, normally on the one that's not done, the decal would sit at the back. It's going to sit that way. You can see where the decal is going to sit on this shaft now. And if you see some people that have got decals in odd spots or things like that, there's a good chance there's been a spine alignment done or a flow done on it. Now, SST puring is a little bit different process. They use a machine, but they do a similar thing to what I've done with the flowing of the shaft. It's really, really similar. And they try and get, you know, that flat line. You know, it's supposed to flex in its purest form. Very expensive machine. It's probably a considerable upcharge if you ever get that SST puring done. It's a similar process, but in either case, you've still got to build the club properly. If you take into consideration, you know, there's all these other considerations, there's head weights and swing weights, and so I'm going to try and get the two clubs as close as I can for total weight, for swing weight, and just do a test and see how they go. So that's a real basic process of what a spine align or a flow is. And we'll have a look at some results soon. Okay, so here's the data on the flow at the bottom versus the standard at the top. Ball speed, 111.8 versus 112, so no difference. In ball speed, no difference in launch angle, 22.2 both of them. Side angle, 2.7 right versus 2.5. Backspin was a little bit more on the standard, a little bit less to the left. But same peak heights and 1 meter difference in length. I mean, if I got rid of, for example, two of the low spinners on the float one, really low spinners there, those two shots, if I got rid of those, the spin then becomes almost identical, the distance becomes identical. But I'll put them back in and then, you know, still the launch and the ball speed is the same. Club data, you know, 82 versus 83, 135, efficiency versus 136. So I'm not seeing anything here that says to me that it's, you know, it's better to do the flow or not. There's the top in the side view of the non-flow, and then the flow is there. It's a little bit more to the left. Very tight, one little loose one, but you know, I don't see anything in the data there that indicates massive differences. All right, so I hit them both. As you can see the results, seat taper, light stiff, one of them flowed, one of them standard. I didn't see any difference. I know it's only a 7-iron, a very small group. Most of the difference comes down to me rather than the equipment, I feel.